I just wanted to share my experience with this in case anyone else is considering it, because a projector like this can either fit your room and your habits really well, or it can turn into a constant little project where you are always adjusting something. For me, this one is for someone who wants a real home theater look and feel, cares about color and movie detail, and is willing to spend a little time getting placement right. It is not really for someone who just wants a bright image in a sunny living room in the middle of the day with no curtains. I can make it work with some ambient light, but when I want it to look its best, I dim the room. What made it interesting to me is that it is trying to balance a few things at once. It is a 4K projector aimed at movie watching. It supports high dynamic range formats like High Dynamic Range 10 and Hybrid Log Gamma, and it is designed to get accurate color without me having to obsess over calibration tools. In real use, that translates to me turning it on, choosing a reasonable picture mode, and not immediately feeling like something is off. Let me talk about the physical experience, because I think that matters with projectors. The unit itself is compact enough that it did not dominate my room, and it looks clean on a shelf or mounted. It feels like a solid consumer projector, not fragile, not overly heavy, and the vents and the layout make sense. I also appreciate that the back panel is laid out in a way where the cables do not feel like a mess if you are routing them down from a ceiling mount. On connections, I used high-definition multimedia interface for everything. I ran one cable from my streaming box and another from a disc player, and I did not have any weird handshaking issues once I had everything set to the right output settings. There are also other ports, including universal serial bus, but day to day, I treated it like a projector that lives and dies by high-definition multimedia interface, because that is how most people are going to use it. Placement was the part where I had to slow down and be a little patient. The throw on this model is helpful for smaller rooms. In my space, getting around a 100-inch image was realistic without pushing the projector all the way to the back wall. I measured and tested a couple of positions before I committed. Once I had it where I wanted, it stayed there. If you are the kind of person who will move it around every weekend, you may find the constant refocusing and realigning annoying. I treated it like a fixed install and it behaved like one. Setup was straightforward. After powering it on, I used the built-in test pattern to square up the image, adjust focus, and check the edges. I always prefer to avoid heavy digital keystone correction because it can soften the image, so I took the time to physically align the projector instead. That effort paid off. Once it was dialed in, the picture looked consistent across the screen, and I did not feel like I was sacrificing sharpness to get a neat rectangle. One nice touch in the box was the factory calibration report. I am not someone who wants to spend my evenings chasing perfect settings, and this gave me a bit more confidence that I was starting from a reasonable baseline. In practice, the color looked natural quickly. Skin tones were the first thing I checked, because that is where a lot of projectors look strange. With the BenQ, faces did not look overly red or sickly, and I did not feel the need to crank the saturation to make things look alive. In daily use, the remote is simple and it does what I need. I did not have to memorize a bunch of weird button combos. Menu navigation is clear, and I could switch picture modes and adjust basic settings without digging through endless layers. I will say the on-screen menus are not flashy, but that is fine. I care more that they are readable from the couch and that they respond quickly. Now to the part everyone actually cares about, which is what it looks like when you put real content on it. I watched a mix of movies, streamed shows, live sports, and some older content that is not mastered particularly well. With true 4K material, the detail is easy to see, especially in wide shots with lots of texture. Things like city scenes, landscapes, and clothing details looked clean without that artificial sharpened edge that some displays add. It is not the kind of sharpness that screams at you. It just looks more resolved, like you are not fighting the display to see fine detail. High Dynamic Range 10 and Hybrid Log Gamma were also noticeable in practice, but not in a gimmicky way. The biggest benefit I saw was that bright highlights had more separation from the rest of the image, like reflections, sunlight, or bright signs at night. At the same time, Dark scenes had more depth when the room was properly dark. I did still have moments where extremely dark scenes could look a little compressed, which is normal for this type of projector in real rooms. The feature that helped there was the dynamic iris. With it enabled, I saw darker scenes look more convincing, with blacks looking closer to black instead of charcoal gray. It is not perfect, and sometimes you can sense the image shifting slightly when a scene cuts from bright to dark, but it was subtle enough that I stopped thinking about it after a while. Color is one of the reasons I would pick this model over simpler, brighter projectors. I watched animated films and nature content, and the greens and reds looked more controlled instead of neon. It felt closer to a cinema look, where the color has range and nuance. When a movie is intentionally muted, it stays muted. When a movie is colorful, it can get colorful without looking cartoonish. Motion was fine for what I watch. Sports looked smooth enough to follow the ball and red jerseys, and I did not see distracting judder beyond what is inherent in certain camera work. I do not use heavy motion smoothing, because it makes films look unnatural to me. If you like that look, it is there to adjust, but I kept things conservative. Fan noise is something people ask about with projectors, and my experience was that it is audible in a quiet scene if you are sitting close to it. But in a typical setup with audio playing, I stopped noticing it. When I mounted it and sat at a normal distance, it blended into the background. If you are extremely sensitive to fan noise, you will still hear it in quiet moments because it is a projector with real cooling needs. One limitation to keep in mind is brightness in real rooms. I could watch at night with a lamp on low and still enjoy it, but if I opened curtains and let daylight in, the image looked washed. That is not a defect unique to this model. It is just the reality of a cinema-style projector. If your room is bright most of the time, I would treat light control as part of the purchase. As for smart features and mobile app support, I want to be clear about how I used it. I did not rely on the projector as a smart television replacement. I used external devices for streaming because that is still the simplest and most reliable approach. In day-to-day life, that meant I turned on the projector, turned on my streaming box or disc player and watched. No fuss. If you want deep app ecosystems inside the projector itself, that is not the mindset here. This is more about the image and the installation. After living with it, my overall impression is that the BenQ HT3550 is a practical home theater projector for someone who cares about movie presentation, wants accurate-looking color without a lot of tweaking, and has a room where they can control lighting. It rewards you if you take a little time to mount it well, align it physically, and feed it good content. The main downsides are the usual projector realities, like needing a darker room to really enjoy contrast, and dealing with placement and alignment if you are picky about geometry. Check the comments of this video for a link to see the current pricing of the BenQ HT3550 4000 home theater projector. Thank you for watching.